The sound of battle has always been a symbol of courage, but for the black soldiers who fought throughout history, their actions were more than just acts of bravery. They were a statement of defiance against a world that refused to acknowledge their humanity, a world that often denied them the very rights they fought to protect. These men, black soldiers, have shaped the course of history, not just through their weapons, but through their undying resilience, their unwavering commitment to justice, and their refusal to be held back by the prejudices of their time. They were not just soldiers. They were the architects of change. The story of black soldiers begins long before the Civil War, long before the glory of the Tuskegee Airmen or the Harlem Hellfighters. For centuries, African men and women were brought to the shores of America in chains, stripped of their freedom and forced into a life of servitude. Yet, even in the face of such oppression, they found ways to fight, not just for their freedom, but for the freedom of others. They did so in the most unimaginable circumstances, from the dusty battlefields of the Revolutionary War to the muddy trenches of World War I. The Revolutionary War saw black soldiers, both enslaved and free, fighting side by side with their white counterparts, despite the fact that they were seen as property rather than people. The most famous of these early soldiers was Crispus Attucks, a free black man who became the first casualty of the American Revolution when he was killed in the Boston Massacre in 1770. Attucks's death was a symbol of the brutality that black Americans had endured for centuries. His sacrifice would echo through history, inspiring generations to come. But it was during the Civil War that black soldiers truly began to reshape their destinies. When President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, he not only freed enslaved people, but he also opened the doors for black men to enlist in the Union Army. The 54th Massachusetts Regiment, one of the first all-black units, became a symbol of black pride and strength. These men, led by Colonel Robert Gould Shaw, fought with a fierce determination to prove their worth. At the Battle of Fort Wagner in 1863, despite overwhelming odds, the 54th made their stand, and though they were ultimately defeated, their bravery became legendary. The bravery of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment was a turning point. It proved to the world that black men could fight with honor and skill. But their struggle wasn't just about proving their military prowess. It was about fighting for their place in a society that had long denied them equality. These soldiers were more than warriors. They were warriors for justice, for their rights, for their freedom. The legacy of these black soldiers didn't stop with the Civil War. In the years following the war, African Americans continued to serve in the military, despite the segregation and discrimination they faced. In World War I, the Harlem Hellfighters, an African American regiment from New York, fought with distinction on the battlefields of France. Their courage in battle earned them the French Croix de Guerre, one of the highest military honors, yet they returned home to a country that continued to oppress them. But they didn't back down. They couldn't. The fight for equality had become as much a part of their identity as their military service. The Harlem Hellfighters' success was a testament to the power of black soldiers in a world that still sought to suppress them. Their story wasn't just about combat. It was about defiance, about pushing against the barriers that society had placed on them. They faced both enemy forces and the oppressive forces of racism, yet they never faltered. By the time World War II arrived, black soldiers were no longer just fighting for freedom. They were fighting for recognition. The Tuskegee Airmen, the first group of African American pilots in the U.S. Army Air Corps, flew through the skies of Europe, proving not only their skill but also their courage in the face of racial prejudice. These men, who had been told they were not capable of flying, became one of the most respected fighter groups in the war. Their success on the battlefield was a blow to the racial stereotypes that had long held black Americans back. The Tuskegee Airmen were a shining example of what black soldiers could achieve when given the chance. Their success marked a turning point, not just in military history but in the history of civil rights. By breaking down the racial barriers in the military, they opened doors for future generations of black servicemen and women. They showed the world that race was no measure of a person's ability or character. Their courage and determination were a beacon for the future. Yet, despite their triumphs, black soldiers continued to face discrimination, both within the military and in the broader society. After World War II, many black veterans returned home to find that they were still denied the same rights as their white counterparts. The battle for equality continued, but now it was not just a battle fought on foreign shores, it was a battle fought on the streets of America. The struggles of these black soldiers were not just about fighting for their country, they were about fighting for their place in the world, fighting for the dignity and respect that had long been denied to them. Their courage on the battlefield became the foundation for the civil rights movements of the 1960s, as black Americans demanded their rightful place in society. As we reflect on the legacy of black soldiers, we must remember that their story is not just about war and sacrifice. It's about the fight for equality, the fight for recognition, and the fight for justice. These soldiers showed us that courage comes in many forms, and that even in the face of oppression, there is power in standing up for what is right. Today, the legacy of black soldiers is being recognized more than ever. We see their stories told on the big screen, in books and in documentaries, but we must continue to honor them by ensuring that their struggles are never forgotten. Their bravery and sacrifice have paved the way for future generations to achieve the freedoms they fought for. And as we continue to share these stories, we must ask ourselves, how can we honor their legacy? How can we ensure that the sacrifices of these brave men are never forgotten? The answer is simple. By telling their stories, by passing them down to future generations, and by continuing to fight for the equality they so valiantly sought. If you've been inspired by the courage and sacrifice of these black soldiers, take a moment to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that celebrate the heroes who changed history forever. The legacy of black soldiers is not confined to the battlefield. It is woven into the very fabric of American history. These soldiers didn't just fight wars, they fought for the rights and dignity of their people. From the earliest days of the nation, black men and women in uniform challenged the notion that race should define a person's worth or abilities. Their courage helped dismantle the walls of segregation and inequality, and their sacrifices paved the way for the civil rights victories that followed. After World War II, the U.S. military still maintained racial segregation. Black soldiers were often relegated to menial tasks or separate units, enduring discrimination even in the face of their heroism. However, the winds of change were beginning to stir, and the bravery displayed by black soldiers during the war played a crucial role in the desegregation of the armed forces. In 1948, President Harry S. Truman issued Executive Order 9981, which mandated the desegregation of the U.S. military. It was a monumental decision, and one that came as a result of years of pressure from civil rights groups and the undeniable bravery of black soldiers during the war. This order signaled that the United States was ready to take its first steps toward racial equality, and it was in large part due to the contributions of black men and women who had fought in the military. Despite the desegregation order, however, racial tensions still ran high, both within the military and society at large. Yet, black soldiers continued to push forward, knowing that each battle fought was not just for their country, but for their own rights. These soldiers faced a unique kind of warfare, one fought not just with guns and grenades, but with resilience, determination, and hope. The Korean War saw the integration of black soldiers in combat units, and they fought valiantly alongside their white counterparts. The experience in Korea was different than previous wars. Black soldiers served in mixed-race units and proved that they were just as capable as anyone else. The 24th Infantry Regiment, an African-American regiment that had been relegated to non-combat duties, was called upon to fight in the Korean War. Despite being undermanned and undersupplied, They fought with great courage, facing not only the enemy forces but also the ingrained racial prejudice within the military. In the 1960s, as the civil rights movement gathered momentum, the role of black soldiers took on new significance. Many black veterans returned from their tours of duty to witness the growing unrest in America. The streets of Birmingham, Selma, and Montgomery became battlegrounds for a new kind of war, the fight for civil rights. The soldiers who had fought in foreign wars now returned home to fight for equality on their own soil. One such soldier was John Carlos, who, along with Tommy Smith, famously raised a black-gloved fist in protest during the 1968 Summer Olympics. Their protest was not just about their individual struggles, but about the struggles of millions of black Americans who had fought, served, and died for a country that refused to grant them the rights they deserved. Their silent yet powerful demonstration sent shockwaves through the world and showed that the fight for civil rights was not just happening in the streets but on the world stage. At the same time, black soldiers in the Vietnam War faced a different kind of challenge. The Vietnam War was a highly controversial conflict, and many African Americans questioned why they were being asked to fight in a foreign war when they still lacked basic rights at home. Despite this, tens of thousands of black soldiers answered the call to serve. They fought alongside soldiers of all races, but the toll the war took on them was disproportionate. The experiences of black soldiers in Vietnam are often overlooked, but they were vital in shaping the broader civil rights movement. Black soldiers faced not only the horrors of combat, but also the harsh realities of systemic racism, both within the military and in their own communities. Their experiences in Vietnam fueled the voices of black veterans who returned home and demanded change. The war exposed deep racial divides and created a generation of black veterans who were determined to change the country they had fought for. The Tuskegee Airmen, the Harlem Hellfighters, the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. All these stories were powerful testaments to the sacrifices and triumphs of black soldiers. Yet, there were countless others who went unrecognized, whose stories have been overshadowed by time. The bravery of these soldiers extends far beyond the history books. It lives on in the struggles, triumphs, and movements they helped create. One of the most profound effects of black soldiers' contributions was their ability to challenge the narrative of racial inferiority. The military, traditionally a reflection of society, had long upheld the idea that black people were less capable, less intelligent, and less deserving of the same rights as whites. But black soldiers, through their determination and excellence, proved these assumptions to be false. They set the stage for the future generations of African Americans who would go on to lead in every field imaginable: science, politics, sports, and more. Their bravery on the battlefield was matched only by their courage off the battlefield. As they returned home after serving their country, they found a world that often still denied them their basic human rights. But despite the challenges, these veterans remained steadfast in their quest for equality. They helped to spark the civil rights movement, which, in the 1960s, would finally begin to make significant strides toward racial equality. The black soldiers who fought for freedom, who endured the hardships of war and racial prejudice, laid the groundwork for the achievements of the civil rights movement. They were not just heroes in uniform, they were pioneers in the fight for justice. Their legacy is far-reaching. Beyond the wars they fought, the battles they won, and the wars they lost. Their true legacy lies in the change they sparked and the doors they opened for future generations of African Americans. We owe so much to these soldiers who gave their lives not just for their country, but for the ideals of equality, justice, and freedom. They helped to shape the world we live in today, and their legacy lives on in every victory for civil rights, every triumph for equality, and every step forward in the fight for justice. If you are inspired by the stories of these brave black soldiers, their struggles, and their triumphs, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel. Let's continue to honor their sacrifices by ensuring their stories are never forgotten. Let's keep their legacy alive so future generations will understand the price of freedom and equality and the role that black soldiers played in shaping the world.